Jo Parfitt here. Today I'm talking to fellow British expat Cathy Dobson about her book Planet Germany that was published last year in 2008. I'm going to ask her how she tackled the process of writing the book, how she stayed motivated and kept believing in herself, because getting it written is sometimes the hardest thing of all. The first thing I'm going to ask you, Cathy, is about self-belief. A lot of my students say to me that it is developing a belief in yourself that is the hardest thing of all. What do you think about that? And how did you manage to stay believing in yourself and your project?
I never worried about writing the book because I wasn't really expecting a lot of people to read it. I mean, it's not about life in Provence or the Algarve or any of the places where people aspire to live. I'm based in the Rhine-Ruhr, the industrial heartland of Germany. Who on earth wants to read about that? So I think I was the most surprised out of anyone when it began to sell quite well and people were reading it because they found it funny and entertaining.
Thank you, Cathy. And how did you manage to keep going? How did you manage to keep having what Carolyn van S. Vines calls arse in chair time?
I'm absolutely the wrong person to ask about this, because I had periods of 3 to 6 months when I didn't make any progress at all. I tend to write in waves. I'll blast through a couple of chapters and then do nothing for a month or so. Ideally, I'd have had someone in the background calling me up and asking for an update all the time. But for me, well, as long as I did sit back down and keep going, the project did keep moving forward. The last 2 or 3 chapters were the worst, because although the end was in sight, the initial enthusiasm was wearing off and I felt it was more of a dash for the finish line. I had to do the most editing on those chapters.
And Cathy, what was your biggest challenge?
The biggest challenge was always finding time. In the end, I wrote a lot of it in the very early morning before the children were awake. I find it easier to write in the mornings. The evenings are hopeless. Even if I don't think I'm tired, I notice that my brain doesn't whiz around making unexpected connections and landing on surprising words in the same way as it does in the mornings. When I write in the morning, the words come out fresh and make you sit up and notice. Evening writing feels very stale and obvious, at least mine does.
There are many writers who don't like to show their work to other people until they feel it's ready. I believe, however, that getting feedback is extremely important and something that you should not avoid. In fact, it's something that you should get every step of the way. How did you manage to get feedback on your work, Cathy?
I think there are 3 core stages in writing. The planning, so deciding what you want to say in a particular section. Then the writing itself. And finally, the editing. The editing is the most time-consuming part, and that's when you really fine-tune your work. I read huge chunks out loud to my family over the tea table, usually between the writing and the editing stage. Reading it out loud helps you to get a feeling for how the prose actually flows. If you find yourself stumbling, or if you can't work out what you originally meant, then you need to change it. I also sent chapters to my brother and another writer friend to read and critique, and both of them sent me really useful feedback about descriptions, characterization, pace and overall direction.
And finally, Cathy, you've written your book, you've published it, it's out there and it's selling. What would your top tip be to other people who are not so far along in the process as you, and those who are currently writing their book?
My number 1 tip would be to write a book plan before you start. You probably want your book to be about 200 pages long. At least that's the point where you get the best financial returns if you're self-publishing. Plan what should go into each chapter and estimate approximately how long each chapter is going to need to be. This will save you lots of time editing and rewriting later on when you suddenly find out your book is only 120 pages, or worse, over 700 pages long.
Thank you very much, Cathy, for talking to me today. If you would like to find out more about Cathy and her book, please go to her website at www.planetgermany.com. Thank you.